one of the things that impressed me most about the New York theatrical scene when I came back from the war was an awareness on everybody's part that the war had been a serious challenge on the subject of race. We were all still shocked at what had happened in Europe to the millions of Jews and others in those camps.
I had expected that America would be open and generous and rewarding to its black citizens who had served in that war and had served with great honor.
And there seemed to be a determination immediately after the war to say to our center of the world that that would never happen again. That on the subject of race, we were one, we were equal, and we were partners and brothers.
When we came back, there were many forces in America, very powerful, that decided that those of us who had been brainwashed with these new ideas from the war, that thought we could come back and change the way America was doing business, was in for a very cruel and a huge surprise. We were going to go back to conditions as was before.
He was one of the greatest figures in American culture. A singer, a giant of a man, an all-American football player, Phi Beta Kappa, law student, actor, Shakespearean, and a leader of his people.
And so inspiring was he, and so powerful was he, that at all costs, he had to be silenced. And as a matter of fact, on the agenda to silence him was the understanding that if we can silence him, all others will come far more easily.
Paul was a threat because he was a tremendously intelligent and well-learned man. Paul also had charisma in the same sense that Martin Luther King had charisma. In other words, Paul was the kind of man that could lead masses of people. And those who understand those things knew that Paul Robeson was the man who could affect large majorities. Now, all this took place in an atmosphere superheated by the relationships between Russia and America at the time.
The growing menace of communism arouses the House of Representatives Un-American Activities Committee. Among the well-informed witnesses testifying is J. Edgar Hoover, head of the Federal Bureau of Investigation. Mr. Hoover speaks with authority on the subject.
The Communist Party of the United States is a fifth column, if there ever was one. It is far better organized than were the Nazis in occupied countries prior to their capitulation. They are seeking to weaken America, just as they did in their era of obstruction when they were aligned with the Nazis. Their goal is the overthrow of our government. There is no doubt as to where a real communist loyalty rests. Their allegiance is to Russia, not the United States.
The reason that Robeson was a very strong supporter of the Soviet Union was it was his belief that they had no discrimination policies against blacks there or against anybody else. Well, he was treated like a prince whenever he came there. He didn't really know what was going on in the rest of the country. So his identification with the Soviet Union, whether he was an actual communist or not, was unimportant. He was theirs, and he supported them in policies both political and cultural, and made a big speech at one point that no black man and no black person in America would ever go to war against the Soviet Union, which sounded like he was calling for treason among the black population in the United States.
The state media made about blacks not fighting against their own interest was interpreted by a lot to mean that he was saying to us, you blacks can't fight. You shouldn't fight the Russians no matter what. Then the powers that be, meaning J. Edgar Hoover, had to cut down Paul's influence. And they set out to demolish the man, and they took some heavy bites out of him.
Baseball's top hitter and star second baseman of the Brooklyn Dodgers, Jackie Robinson, comes to bat for Uncle Sam to refute Paul Robeson's remark that U.S. Negroes would not fight in a war against Russia.
I'm on my way to Washington to testify before the House on Un-American Activities Committee. That's all I can say at this time. I'll make further statements from Washington.
Robinson is the last witness to testify concerning the loyalty of the members of his race. And before the committee, he reads his own prepared statement.
I've been asked to express my views on Paul Robeson's statement in Paris to the effect that American Negroes would refuse to fight in any war against Russia because we love Russia so much. I haven't any comment to make except that, on that statement, except that if Mr. Robeson actually made it, it sounds very silly to me. And most Negroes and Italians and Irish and Jews and Swedes and Slavs and other Americans would act just as all these groups did in the last war. They'd do their best to keep their country out of war. If unsuccessful, they'd do their best to help their country win the war against Russia or any other enemy that threatened us.